I wonder how many Afghan women and girls will die in the next year under Taliban control. Probably not as many as women and girls whose dreams have been suddenly stripped from them under Taliban control. Thank you, Joe Biden. And that is the theme of today's Bold and Blunt. I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you the Christian conservative view of today's news, politics, culture, and events. And Bold and Blunt, I'm happy to announce, is now played on the Edify podcast platform. Just go to Edify, edifi.app/podcasts and search for Bold and Blunt there. The network is Christian in slant, so Bold and Blunt, being Christian and conservative as it is, fits right in. I hope you check it out. Joe Biden's bungling of Afghanistan and the fallout not just to women and girls, the fallout to American citizens, the fallout to American allies, the fallout to the nation of America for years to come, as other countries with hostile intents toward America pick up the slack, exploit the situation, and rush in and partner with the Taliban, with terrorist groups against America's interests. I have a great guest today, Jennifer Kerns. She is host of the new nationally syndicated show, All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns, and she is also publisher of allamericannews.com. More than that, she is a great American patriot, a great female American patriot, well positioned to comment on the dire situation of Afghan women and children, and she'll be on in the second segment to discuss that. Before I get to that, though, a quick heads up to a special deal the Washington Times is offering, particularly for Bold and Blunt listeners, and that is a 50% discount for a year's access to the digital platform of the Washington Times, which includes news, investigative reports, commentaries, and, of course, all the great podcasts that the Washington Times offers. Go to washingtontimes.com/Cheryl, type in your info, and please, please, please support the efforts of the Washington Times to bring you the truths you need to fight the far leftists in the media who are busily burying the truths about the Joe Biden administration, starting with Afghanistan. And you know what's funny about this is that even some in the mainstream media, even, let's be truthful, even many in the mainstream media haven't been able to properly cover the White House on the bungling. They haven't been able to provide Joe Biden with their normal level of shelter from the storm because it's been so horrific. The betrayal of America against Afghanistan. And there's no other way to look at it. There's no other term for it. America betrayed Afghanistan. And sad to say, because Joe Biden is our president and he is the one that led America down this path of betrayal, it makes our entire nation look bad. We here in America know the sources of the fault. We know who to blame. But there are plenty of people in overseas spots that don't look at the nuances of American politics and see the natural divides in this country between conservatives and pro-American patriots and the far leftist loons that fight the patriots in America. They don't make that natural divide. They just look at America as America, and they look at the president as representative of American policy, which includes all of America. So Joe Biden's feckless exodus makes us all look bad, makes us look bad as an entire nation, makes us look like a nation of weak-kneed, cowardly, run for the hills, forget our allies, forget our friends type of country. And that is just sad and sorry. Unless, of course, you are a Washington Post columnist named Jennifer Rubin. Jennifer Rubin bucked even her colleagues' disgust with this White House's hasty exit from Afghanistan. And she penned a defense of Joe Biden. She wrote in part, chaotic does not equal failed. And just because our intelligence community blew it big time, again, does not mean the United States has abandoned its Afghan partners. She wrote this. She actually put her name on it and wrote it in the Washington Post, and the Washington Post was happy enough to publish it. It's an astonishing defense, astonishing in its remarkable ability to put the blinders on. And still, even at this point in time, even as we are watching the images of women in Afghanistan handing their babies over barbed wire to soldiers, even as we are watching Afghan innocents plunge to their death as they cling in desperate attempt to fly to freedom to a plane and aren't able to grab a hold and keep a hold, and so they plunge to their death. It's an astonishing reaction, an astonishing response. It's an astonishing blinder that must be put over somebody to still see these images, watch these videos unfold, read the headlines of the chaos, that's air quotes because it's a lot more than chaos that's going on, to see this chaos nevertheless, and to pretend as if, yes, our intel blew it, that crazy intel, that rascally, rabbity intel blew it again, but it doesn't mean we abandoned our Afghan partners, even though we did abandon them. It doesn't mean we abandoned our partners. Well, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, there's an old saying, it is a duck. And sad to say, Joe Biden's White House, abandoned Afghan partners, including American citizens, because quack, 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 that's what it looks like. And that's what it is. Jennifer Rubin manages to spin it in defense of this administration. So kudos to her for her level of imagination. It's very childlike in a way. But for the rest of us in the sane world, we see what's taking place in Afghanistan in some degree of horror at what's befallen these poor people who are stuck there and now waiting for America to come rescue them. The very America that stuck them there in the first place, they're relying on to come and save them, even though it's about, a bazillion times harder for now America to come in to Afghanistan and save them. The only way America could swoop in and save all the thousands of people who need to be saved in Afghanistan right now is if this administration once again sends in the troops that it just exited, the troops that it just swore it was going to exit and send home and never again bring back over into Afghanistan again. The only way to recover from this, chaos, as the media likes to downplay it, this misstep, as maybe some on the left like to term it, the only way to fully recover and to rectify the situation is for America to send troops back in masse and drive the Taliban from its position, from its airport perimeter position, from its gate guarding of the airport, so that we can actually land planes and get these people out of there, so that we can actually station troops who can then spread out across the country and find all those people who are now hiding from the Taliban, in fear of their lives, but also hiding and therefore cutting off communications with someone who may be able to save them. Someone like Americans who are supposed to save them in the first place. Listen to this. It's from Sky News. The television host is interviewing these young girls who have recently fled Afghanistan to escape the Taliban. Qatar has taken them in. And they are discussing their plight and the sudden darkness that has taken over and crushed their plans in life. Listen in.
These girls were supposed to be the future of Afghanistan. Still teenagers, but already inventing life-saving equipment. Just months ago, they were winning international competitions, making a low-cost ventilator out of car parts in the pandemic. They've now had to flee their homes in Herat province, leaving with almost nothing and little time for goodbyes.
When we came from Afghanistan, it was a miserable circumstance for us, and
this is one of the
we
girls.
left our family.
She's crying.
I'm so sorry.
No, take your time.
And it was so hard for us because our family there and our country destroyed.
Well, we really thought that we have to go
Here's
because
another
we
girl.
didn't have any other choice because serving our country is just by getting educated.
Qatar has evacuated hundreds of students in recent days, mostly girls. Many who say protecting their education is the reason they fled.
Imagine being a girl in that country, and here you are going to school, right, with big plans for the future, studying to become this, planning on becoming that, preparing for a future in the job market, at some esteemed position, educating yourself, working hard, doing all the things that, American girls do, mostly without even thinking. But in other countries, education is actually a gift, and it's a huge blessing when it comes your way. That's how it was in Afghanistan for women and girls, for young girls, for young student girls. Now they had to flee. The students are evacuated. These girls have been evacuated to another country to maybe pick up where they left off, maybe continue their education, maybe not. Either way, their families are divided now. They're separated. They're scared. They're wondering, what is going on? What's going on in the country that I thought was going to be safe from the Taliban? And I thought that because that's what America promised. Here we go, back to more Sky News.
I put these issues directly to the Taliban.
So Sky News journalist sits down with a spokesperson from the Taliban to discuss these girls' situation, these fleeing students' fears about their future. And this is what the Taliban has to say.
Women have fought hard for their rights in Afghanistan, but they're terrified of what life may look like under your rule and what they stand to lose. What do they stand to lose?
They will lose nothing. Only if they had no hijab, they will have a hijab. Should not impose your culture on us, or not we are imposing our culture on you.
They will lose nothing. They will lose nothing. They will lose nothing under the Taliban. We know that's not to be true, don't we? Joe Biden may seek to open lines of communication with the Taliban, to discuss with them terms of the exit, terms of getting people out to safety. The CIA may send in operatives quietly to strike deals with the Taliban. And meanwhile, from this administration will come the oh so comforting messages that don't worry, women and girls won't be abandoned, American citizens won't be abandoned, allies of America won't be abandoned. We've actually already gotten out thousands of American citizens. How many? Well, we can't say, we won't say. Day after day I watch these press conferences and the same question comes up every day. How many Americans have you rescued? And the same answer is given from this administration every day. We don't release the exact number. Why? Who knows why? This is how the administration is running things. But we're supposed to trust them. Just like we're supposed to trust the Taliban for women and girls. No changes, nothing will change. And yet, this headline from CNN just recently, Taliban tells Afghan women to stay home from work because soldiers are, quote, not trained, unquote, to respect them. Well, isn't that comforting? On one hand, nothing changes for women and girls. But on the other hand, here's the quote from the Taliban spokesperson in this CNN article. We are happy for them, meaning women and girls, to enter the buildings, their places of work, in other words, but we want to make sure they do not face any worries. Therefore, we have asked them to take time off from work until the situation gets back to a normal order and women-related procedures are in place. Then they can return to their jobs once it's announced, end quote. Women-related procedures are in place? How about not killing women for the crime of not having facial coverings? How about that as one woman-related procedure? And what does this talk about? The situation gets back to a normal, as if the Taliban has no control over the situation that it, in effect, right now, in truth, controls. The Taliban wants to act like they're waiting for this situation to get back to normal to make it safe for women and children. How about issuing an order saying, do not touch women and girls? Do not touch them. Do not kill them. Do not murder them. Do not rape them. Do not physically harm them in any shape or form. How about an order like that? It's a despicable situation. How about this? It's a deplorable situation. It's deplorable. And for shame, President Joe Biden. For shame. Shame on him. My guest today, Jennifer Kerns, is going to discuss this even more. Host of the nationally syndicated All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns, publisher of allamericannews.com, former GOP strategist, a spokesperson for the California Republican Party, a strategist for the Colorado recalls over the Second Amendment, and a frequent Newsmax TV contributor. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, I love the title. You're my kind of person.
Well, this should be a lively show then. Thank you. So I'm looking at some of these headlines that are coming out about Afghan women. Afghan women throwing babies over barbed wire to save them. Afghan mom blinded by Taliban claims they feed human bodies to dogs. What is it like in your imagination to be a woman or a female in Afghanistan right now?
Oh, Cheryl, it has to be something close to what you've heard about hell on earth. I fear, too, that we won't really actually know what women and girls in Afghanistan are going through at this moment until 18 months or 2 years from now, once, we can finally go back in a way that the United States and other organizations, humanitarian organizations, can actually have the upper hand. But that's just not happening. And the silence is deafening from, the liberal community who tells us they care about women, they care about young girls, they care about how the U.S. is perceived around the world. But right now, at this moment in Kabul, we're back to where we were in the Obama administration. We're back to where we were when Secretary Clinton was in charge of things. We're back to leading from behind, and that puts women and girls in these countries, these Middle Eastern countries, in an extreme disadvantage. What I mean by the silence is deafening, I just happened to, right before you called, pulled up the Twitter account for the Time's Up organization. Now, everyone knows this is one of the preeminent organizations who forced the case against Harvey Weinstein. It's forced, men to behave properly across the United States of America. And most of that is good, but they have been virtually silent on the situation befalling women and girls in Afghanistan. In fact, since August 22nd, so over the weekend, they were completely silent as America and the rest of the world watched what's unfolding in Afghanistan. Instead, on August 22nd, issuing a statement from their president and CEO about the fall of Andrew Cuomo. That is what the American feminist movement is about. In fact, they go into, and I thought you would find this funny, Cheryl, they go into a 6-part tweet titled 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6, detailing how they had some internal strife in their organization, and it existed long before Andrew Cuomo's downfall. Well, this goes against everything we want people to believe about strong, empowered women, right? Instead of sticking up for others around the globe who are being bullied, and we know that women and girls are being more than bullied in these countries. Instead of sticking up for women around the world, they're focusing on their own selfish motives, their own selfish organizations. I think that speaks volumes about what the feminist movement has devolved to today.
It's ridiculous. And, I think of Nancy Pelosi coming out and using her platform to praise Joe Biden's, exodus from Afghanistan. Not a word about women and girls. And I look back, I remember when Bill Clinton, with all his issues with women, and the women's rights groups were strangely silent over that. But this is horrific. This is horrible to think. If you're a teenage girl in Afghanistan right now, you've been raised with the idea that your hopes and aspirations can actually come true. And boom, overnight, you're thrown into your home and thrown into a cloth covering from head to toe if you want to go outside.
It's true, and look, you have to look at the shocking value of this, right? I mean, here is the United States of America, who's gone through this great reckoning, right, over the last 2 years, as the world has watched the Me Too movement, the Time's Up organization, and you have to wonder what people in other countries are thinking as they look at us and see this happening. I can't help but think, and maybe this is too deep of me, maybe this is too conspiratorial, we have been told for the last 4 or 5 years that the Democratic Party, that America is not really an exceptional place. Joe Biden said in 2014 or 2015 that, there's nothing special about America. Michelle Obama told us, make America great again. She said America was never great. Right. You can't help but think, Cheryl, that some of this playing out is almost intentionally to make America look bad, to prove the Democrats' point that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez makes, that Rashida Tlaib makes, that the Squad makes, that America's not really that great, and America's really not a place to be celebrated. We're seeing that now. I think in the next months to come, we're going to see terrible polling on the image of the United States of America around the globe. Yep. Because we didn't help the situation in Afghanistan.
You're absolutely right. And it's hard to wrap your mind around this right now, but we're only about 7 months into Joe Biden's administration. This is just the tip of the iceberg to come, don't you think?
Oh, that is so true and so shocking, right? And the fact that he would dare blame this on Donald Trump, as if this, Trump's, of course. Look at how they blamed George W. Bush for intelligence failures on the morning of 9/11. George W. Bush had only been in office about 2.5 weeks fewer than Joe Biden has been in office now, yet they don't own anything, and that's what the American people just find so appalling about this. Look at the liberals, how they heralded Colin Powell back in the war on terror when he said a war in a country is like Pottery Barn. You break it, you buy it. Well, looking at Afghanistan over the last 7 days, we broke the entire store. We're going to own it. We just bought the entire Pottery Barn line of franchises for the next 20 years, I'm afraid, in Afghanistan.
It's funny, you get someone like Tony Blair calling Joe Biden imbecilic, and, he's ticked off Angela Merkel in Germany, he's ticked off NATO, he's ticked off our allies, and he still continues with the blame game. And if you look at going forward, where do you see this leading? Because I don't see an easy solution that puts America back at the forefront of the international community, leading from the front.
No, I think it'll be quite some time, and I think it'll have to be a new administration that does that. And look, I was working the phones all weekend with the special forces that I know who are overseas, some of them who are in Landstuhl, Germany, around Ramstein Air Base. They were told over the weekend to expect an inflow of patients. And I said, patients, not refugees. And they said, no. There was an alert given to the Landstuhl Hospital, which is where the physical therapists are they've been physical therapists for SEAL Team 4, SEAL Team 10, DevWu, I'm probably mispronouncing that, Green Berets in the war on terror. And they were put on high alert. And Ramstein Air Base actually was also given a no alcohol consumption order, which basically means get ready, people are coming your way. Now, I don't know if that's, U.S. troops, Afghan troops, refugees that they plan to hold there, but it's clear that the situation is getting worse and not better for the United States of America and for our allies in Afghanistan. And I fear, Cheryl, that we're actually not even hearing really what's going on there, because we have a White House that had an out-of-office notice on their inbox the day that the day that Kabul fell. We have a president who was also on vacation when that happened. And so I'm concerned about the flow of information. It's going to be up to people like you, intelligent journalists, who are going to work their sources and find out what's really going on there. And I fear we have only seen the tip of the iceberg.
That's a great point you bring up, Jen, about the communication flow, because here's the thing: if I'm someone who assisted U.S. troops in Afghanistan these last years, or if I'm an American citizen in Afghanistan waiting to be saved, I'm afraid to come out of hiding. And so even if Joe Biden's administration had the best interests of these allies and citizens at heart and truly wanted to get them out to safety now and immediately, how is he going to find them? There's nobody there to give them information about where to locate these people.
Yeah, this is really the one of the most tragic things I think that's happened in the last 72 hours is that the United States government told people, we can't guarantee your safe passage, but if you can make it to the Kabul airport, we'll be sure to give you a lift out of Afghanistan. Well, think about this. Back in, I think it was 1994, our U.S. troops, allied troops, were forced to run the Mogadishu Mile, is what they ended up calling that treacherous stretch of land there when Bill Clinton had the Black Hawk Down situation. Now, the Mogadishu Mile was run by people who have to qualify annually for a 6-minute mile or go through rigorous training to become a United States Special Forces operator. We are asking citizens of other countries who might be elderly, who might be female, who might otherwise be frail, that they are responsible for getting themselves to the airport so they can get a lift out of their country. This is I think, one of the things that we won't hear about right away, but when people start to finally find their way to safe passage, Cheryl, I think we're going to hear nightmare stories about what people had to go through. And, there's that famous picture that came out last weekend of the C-17, hundreds of those men on that C-17 flight. What struck me as a woman, and it might strike you this way as well, I thought, where are the women?
Right.
There were a handful of women on that plane. There were, I think I counted 2 young girls on that plane. Where were the women? These men either left the women and girls behind, which is not good, or the women are in hiding of their own choice and couldn't get to the airport. What is going to happen to those women in Afghanistan? I shudder to think of the hell that they may be living in or about to be living in.
Here's where the women were. They were lined up at the barbed wire, passing their babies and young toddlers over the fence for American soldiers to take them to safety. It's unconscionable what this administration has done. And as we speak, Jennifer, I am looking at a Newsmax news headline right now about how the Pentagon is focused on evacuation as their highest priority. I look at the Joe Biden administration and I see them more hostile, more focused on forcing American citizens to get a COVID vaccine and wear face masks in school than they do against the Taliban and reeling back those terrorist tendencies of that organization to evacuate allies and citizens to safety.
Yeah, it's true. Democrats in America are too busy terrorizing their own citizens, right? Forcing mandates for vaccines, forcing mandates for masks. Whatever happened, by the way, to my body, my choice? We've been told for so many years as women.
Yesterday, Jen.
So, we've been told, in fact, the direct quote was that a woman's healthcare decision should be between a woman and her doctor. How many midterm elections have we been told that? Yet you see what's going on in America. And again, you make such a great point. They are so interested in the domestic policy and really are so out of depth on their foreign policy. What alarms me is that there may be others than Joe Biden involved in this. You heard Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, say the other day that he had just gotten off the phone with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and I almost spit out my coffee. I thought, is this the Hillary Clinton that was in charge of the Arab Spring and turned that into basically tornado season, which is what we call it in the South? It is just mind-blowing, the lack of focus that is on how we are perceived around the world, how we are helping our friends and allies around the world. You can't help but think, again, as I said at the top, if this isn't maybe a little intentional to let people flail a little bit, let our troops flail a little bit, and sort of prove the point that's been made by the progressive wing of the party, which is in charge of the Democratic Party today, to make the point, maybe America is not that exceptional after all.
Yeah, and the only thing I would disagree with what you just said there is not the progressive wing, but the socialist/communist wing, because that, in my mind, is what the Democrat Party has become. Let me just ask you this one last question before we have to go. I've racked my brains over this to try and figure out why it was so impossible for the Joe Biden administration to evacuate our allies and at least our citizens before pulling U.S. troops. Why? What's your answer to that?
Well, look, why is it taking Biden so long to evacuate?
Why before pulling the troops, why wouldn't this administration evacuate U.S. citizens and our allies? Why did they say that was the wrong way to go?
Well, look, it's clear that they were not expecting this, and that speaks to, again, their lack of focus on foreign policy. Look, no one thinks that we should be in any nation for the next 50 years. I have a lot of libertarian friends. I have a lot of Democrat friends having come up in politics in California and New York. So look, no one's suggesting that we should, go to a country initially and then remain there for 50 years. However, there is a proper way to draw down in a country. Look at the weapons cache that we have now left the Taliban. Yep. They now have more Black Hawk helicopters than 166 countries. We've also given them, I think the number was $2 billion in a very sophisticated, high-tech, top-secret equipment. To say that a burn bag probably didn't even happen on the way out of Kabul, that tells me that we weren't negotiating our exit. We weren't planning a very well-thought-out drawdown. That tells me we were running out of Afghanistan with our tail between our legs. It tells me that we were run out of town on a rail. That is what it tells me, and that again, it just goes back to that same Democrat establishment foreign policy mindset of Hillary Clinton and the Arab Spring, where America was tarnished, but boy, the people in these countries were even more so.
Feckless Joe Biden. Make way for the apology tours, I'm sure. Well,
hey,
right?
He was supposed to bring us calm, and I thought the days of crisis and chaos with Donald Trump were over. I guess that wasn't true either.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Well, Jennifer Kerns, publisher of allamericannews.com, nationally syndicated radio host, All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns. Thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Great to be with you.
And there you have it, another Bold and Blunt episode with another great Bold and Blunt guest. If you like what you hear, please feel free to subscribe to my Bold and Blunt podcast. Get it delivered straight to your email box, along with my commentaries at the Washington Times. Just go to WashingtonTimes.com, find my name hyperlinked on the site. That's Cheryl Chumley. Click on it, scroll to the bottom, and there are some easy directions on how to subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter, so you'll get my commentaries series, my great Bold and Blunt podcasts, delivered Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in time for the lunch hour, right to your email box. It would be my great honor to have you as a subscribed member. So thank you for listening. And I do want to give a shout out to Edify, which is now hosting my Bold and Blunt podcast. Please go to edify.app/podcasts and find my Bold and Blunt podcast posted there. You can also download Edify app to your smartphone and check out all these great podcasts that Edify has to offer. They're Christian in slant, they're Christian in tone, they're motivational, they're inspirational, and my goodness, look around the nation. What we need most of all is a good daily dose of godly inspiration. Thank you for listening, and hopefully thank you for subscribing. And to my existing subscribers, you're the best. Thank you so much. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.